So this is the stage function. I apologize because there's no video on the stage at that time. If you really do prefer video, we can go into like another general platform. But if you're okay with this, we can just do this right here. It's up to you. Yeah. We're recording this and we'll put it on YouTube. It'll go on my channel. Of course, you're free to copy or uncopy and upload it to yours as well.
Oh, okay. All right, that's okay.
All right, so I watched or at least I watched some of the discussion you had with vegan games. I kind of just wanted to ask you a few questions to get some clarity. It's actually live stream. So, I just wanted to know, on your view, is it okay when we take the farm animals that we currently have right now, like cows, chickens, pigs? I know you said with pigs it's really bad. When we make purchases or consume cows, chickens, pigs, do you think that's like a morally reprehensible thing on your view?
So I think that it depends on a lot of stuff, like what kind of animal it is. Depends on.
I specified the animals. Yeah, I specified which animals they were. And by conditions, I'm just talking about the average consumer purchase in the United States.
Which animal?
Cows or chickens or pigs.
So that's three different animals. It would be three different.
Go one by one. Let's go with pigs first.
Yeah. So and to get to the basic, something that I think we'll probably come up later anyway, is that I don't know if it's my favorite way to frame things, the perspective of the 1 or 0 morally laudable, or even morally laudable, morally neutral, and morally reprehensible. I think I see morality in shades of gray, so I think that it is somewhere in that shading.
In the shading of what? Morally reprehensible or what? What do you...
Yeah, some reprehensible, neutral. So something like, so for example, I think that like maybe under the conditions I'm familiar with, one could probably paint the consumption of chickens as mildly morally reprehensible, all the way up to very morally reprehensible. It will depend on a lot of other factors to consider.
We're considering. So when I ask, so if we were to take, I mean, we can go with chickens actually. That's just to get clarity on the answer, for pigs, you would say it's morally in the shade of morally reprehensible, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think for chickens, cows, and pigs, is all various shades of, so like morally not great, all the way up to morally pretty bad. Does not scale to the level, I don't think, in most cases of crimes against humanity. But I think it scales pretty damn high in most cases. So I think if you're...
So it doesn't scale to... Yeah, it's like... So if I could reproduce your position, it would just be for, pigs, cows, and chickens, there is some, like, variation of how bad it is depending on the conditions, but it's somewhere in the shade of morally reprehensible to, like, somewhat morally reprehensible to, like, fairly moderately or morally reprehensible, but it's not to the degree where it's, like, horrific. Is that
I don't think horrific... Yeah, so, like, something like horrific would be something an individual can judge. I think horror is an...
I'm just asking on your judgment. Yeah, definitely your judgment.
Yeah, I would say that in various aspects of the farming, the industrialized farming of specifically pigs, definitely cattle come close, is, I would say, really, really distasteful. Very, very bad as far as my own on my own account. So like definitely like holy crap, this is pretty bad, and I would prefer not to continue.
Okay. Cool. Do you consume cows? If I could just ask, do you consume cows, chickens, or pigs?
It's all three, but I eat very little pork because I just don't eat that much. And,
all right. So it's cows and chickens then.
And a whole lot of other fish.
Yeah. So, okay, but with the cows and chickens, do you think that that's like in the area of morally reprehensible?
Yes.
Okay.
The reprehensible is it gets an interesting choice of words. Definitely not great. Definitely not great.
Well, here's the thing. Like, so when we're talking about like, these degrees of doing something morally bad, there's some kind of scale where we look at something where like I did something and it's I was like rude to someone, for example, like all else considered equal, maybe that might be not the best thing, or in some cases maybe, but that's going to be very different from like taking an individual and instead of being rude to them, just killing them or something. It's going to carry a lot.
Depends on the condition of the individual.
Yeah, of course, but we're I'm not talking about like self-defense or something like that. Yeah. So I just want to get clarity here. So do you think it's within the territory of morally reprehensible and it's just something you do anyway? Is that what it is?
That's correct. For my own personal thing, yeah. So like I look forward to things changing for the better, so that given my own series of trade-offs, that the systemic situation with farming and food production would be such that someone like myself, who's probably, I don't know, not overly emotional about animal rights, and just no longer really be even mildly inconvenienced to make a choice to make the world better for animal suffering. So
do you think that you... Yeah, but before we have like things like technology that brings about this better future and whatnot, the way things are continually going right now, like, do you think that you ought not do those things that you're doing and just do them anyway? Is that what it is, or?
I think if there was a copy universe of ours and there was a version of me that wasn't doing any meat consumption, I'd be like, hey, that's really good, man. That's definitely better than what I'm doing. But it's not something that leans on me to an incredible extent.
Would you say that there's like some sort of moral obligation to not do those things?
What do you mean by obligation?
Yeah, so in morality, in these terms, there's like things like morally obligatory things versus supererogatory things. So we take certain things to be like, oh, if I did this, I would be better, but I'm not really a bad person. It's not like it's not something that really counts in favor of me being a bad person if I don't do it. So for example, charity, right? When we go to a homeless person, if you give them some charity, assuming they use that for good purposes or whatever, it's probably a good thing that you did. It's probably better in this alternative universe, it's probably better you gave the charity than not. However, we wouldn't look at someone who did not give a charity and say, well, they did not give the charity, therefore, they're doing some, they had an obligation to do it and they didn't do it, they didn't meet their moral obligation, right? However, if we talk about, slicing someone in the throat, an innocent person, we wouldn't just say like, oh, well, in an alternative universe, it would be better if I didn't slice someone in the throat. But, yeah, it happened. We would say no, there was a moral obligation for you to not slice someone in the throat.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, sure. So what I'm just trying to get at is, for these cows and chickens and pigs, do you think that this is the kind of thing that's like the charity giving thing, where it's supererogatory, or do you think it's morally obligatory? Which kind of thing do you think that falls into?
Yes, I would. A pretty decent analogy. Let me just try this one on for size. It's like a truck driver in relation to possums and bunny rabbits that cross the road. You hear the bump, Like one time I was driving my car, it was really late at night, and this possum just appeared in the middle of the lane of the freeway. And I didn't want to swerve to cause any more excess damage, so I was like, good God, but luckily he was right between the wheels. He didn't have the wherewithal to duck, so his head got blasted all over my engine block. And I felt not so great about that. So I would say that the consumption of animals, for me personally, is something to that effect of like, ugh, yeah, definitely not a great thing. I'm not proud of, and I would say morally it's a net negative in my view.
So, do you think it's morally obligatory or supererogatory?
I don't subscribe to that dichotomy.
Okay. Do you think that there is any obligation to not do it?
You mean by obligation?
Yeah. So by obligation, I mean that you ought not do it to a degree that if you do it, it counts in favor of you being a bad person.
So I don't think there's such a thing as bad people and good people. I think all people lie on a spectrum of maximally bad to maximally good.
No, I'm not. My question didn't dispute any kind of spectrum view of that.
I think it makes me more
I'm not
bad.
presenting it. Yeah. It counts in favor of you being a worse. Like you would look at that. By morally obligatory, I just mean someone does that action and you look at them, and if you were to look at someone doing an action like that, you would say, "Wow, that's a really shitty thing that you're doing right now."
Yeah.
Right?
I would say that I'm not comfortable agreeing with the obligatory sort of nomenclature, but I would say that.
We can disambiguate it. That's fine.
For sure.
We can just say, yeah. But you just look at it and say, like, oh, this is the kind of thing that's a really shitty thing to do. Would you say it's
for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah, shittier than not. Definitely shittier than not.
Well, just not just shittier than not, right? Like if I'm rude to someone, it could be shittier than not. It's shittier than not, and to a substantial degree. Like.
Yeah, to me, I would say it substantiates at a moderate degree, and I think there's definitely room for personal interpretation.
Yeah.
But I think for me, it's to a moderate degree. Now, I don't know if my own personal emoting on morality is in any way indicative of the sort of the ultra-structure of morality around ethical veganism. I could be the exception. I could be in my own personal way not super logical. I could be, insufficiently sort of emotive to be kind of used for a reference human. It would just be like, oh, Dr. Mike's really mechanical about the way he does stuff, or he really undervalues animal life in kind of a subjective way that's unique to his own way. So I don't claim to speak for all animal consumers in this regard, but I will say that for myself personally, I think it's like, oh, man, the day I don't eat animals anymore will definitely be a much better day.
Wait, but that's not what I'm asking. Like, I'm just what I'm asking is, I just want to know in your view, like, if you or other people consume these animals. Okay, we can go through each one. So for you, if you consume these animals, do you think it would be? Actually, we can stick to you. It's fine. If you consume these animals, do you think it would be morally? Sorry, do you think it would be like a really bad thing to do? Would you like to say? I mean, there's obviously some degrees of what really bad means, but would you? But I think there's a reasonable common understanding. Okay. If you did, so we would just be bad. But to the point where you could still do it, and you acknowledge it's a bad thing you do, but you're still you're still just doing. It's just one of the bad things that you're doing, right?
As opposed
to not doing it.
Not doing it.
No, so you could do bad things and it wouldn't be one of the bad things you do. It would be some kind of thing that cascades in your mind until it wrecks your psychology, keeps you awake at night, and eventually extinguishes with you no longer being able to do it. So I think you're trying to say that I'm comfortable.
I'm not following.
So
yeah,
let me explain.
I wasn't.
Okay, so I could be quite comfortable with the amount of death and suffering that my actions are helping to cause. Or I could be very, very uncomfortable with them. I would say I'm somewhere between the two, where I'm like, ugh, but it does not keep me awake at night.
Okay, so it's bad, somewhere between bad and very bad, not keeping you awake at night. Right? Okay. Now let's say that you have a case where there were humans that were being put in the same conditions as these the same average conditions as the chickens and cows and pigs, and you were to purchase their flesh in the store, where would you put that in terms of this scale?
Lying awake at night.
Okay. Now, so here's the question. So, what's the difference between the human context? So, what's true in one context that's not true in the other context? Like, what proposition is true for this? Yeah, that it's not true in the other context. That if it was true of the humans, you would say, actually, now the humans are on the same scale where it's not keeping me awake at night, but it's just like somewhere between moderately bad and really bad, but not keeping me awake at night.
Sure. Yeah, so I count like 8 spectrums that feed into morality that could have a weighing on the way I construct my answer.
But just to be clear, before you give me the spectrums, like, are these propositions that are true of one but not true of the other?
They apply to all organisms.
Okay, so that would be a category error with respect to the question I'm asking. So the question isn't how do you like evaluate morality. The question isn't I'm not asking like for a normative theory or anything like that. What I'm just asking for is you're giving an evaluation in one context and another evaluation in another context. In one context, you gave an evaluation of moderate to severe but not keeping me awake. In another context, you gave an evaluation of keeping me awake. All I want to know is, without like going into a whole normative theory, all I just want to know is what propositions need to change in one context. What propositions are true of one context that are not true of the other context, such that if they were true of the initial context, you would now say they're on the same level. So, for example,
that's potentially up to 8 things.
Okay, so 8 propositions, and each of those propositions are true of one context but not true of the other.
No, they're all. One of them is probably a little bit more of an either or. Like it pretty distinctly disambiguates humans and all other animals. But the other 7, I would say, are even gradations. That's why they're spectral. So I would say that it makes things not either or, but it makes things less bad or more bad depending.
Mike, that's the scalar. Just to be clear, spectrums or continuous variables are fine as propositions that are true of one or not true of the other. So, for example, you can say, well, height is a spectrum, for example. People can be, it's not short or tall. We can dichotomize the variable of height. But we can also say, well, at this sort of scale of height, it's like more okay to kill people, but at shorter and shorter you get, the more of a crime against humanity. We can do that as well. So we can say degree of shortness or degree of tallness is a proposition that's true of one or not true of the other. So I'm okay.
So just real quick, it can't be true of one but not true of the other. It has to be reflected as a magnitude. More or less true is a more accurate way of putting it. So
you're using a non-Boolean sense of truth. So you're not saying, when we talk about, because typically in logic, and I understand there's non-bivalent forms of logic. So you can use, there's like certain quadvalent forms where there's lots and gaps. But we typically say, and it's fine if you want to deviate from this, things are a proposition is either true or false. Now, when you say degree of truth, I take it to mean that there's like, usually people say that in the sense of like a degree of accurately describing your position, or accurately describing something, like a degree of accuracy. Because you want to say like something, if something gets like 99 facts right, if a book gets 99 facts right, but the 100th one is wrong, technically the whole, the conjunction of all the propositions in the book are false. However, we want to say that book is more accurate than the book that gets 99 wrong and 1 right. Or are you just saying that truth itself is not bivalent? Are you saying truth itself is just this scalar kind of thing?
That's a good question. So I think that if you want to decide if something is better or worse than something, or let's say less or more morally good or evil than something, I think that's a possibility. I think if you're trying to decide whether something is definitely morally bad, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. Furthermore, if you think that something is morally pretty bad, but something else is morally really bad, I don't think in many cases you'll find a very, very clear-cut dividing line between those two.
Well, just to be clear, Mike, I'm not. Yeah, just to be clear, Mike, I'm not asking. This question isn't in relation to your moral evaluation of anything. It's actually a deeper question. It's in relation to. The only reason I'm bringing it up is because you said there are degrees of truth. So this is just a question in relation to.
I can justify.
Yeah, this is a question. This is just a question in terms of how you're evaluating the truth of a proposition. So some. Yeah.
I can definitely explain. So if you say something is bad, what I mean by degrees of truth is how bad. Like, it's true to say that it's bad, and the how bad, I think there's an important dimension there that really sort of separates out terrible versus not so bad versus just a slap on the wrist versus like the worst crime against.
I don't think that's quite capturing the question, though. So I understand what you're saying, and I appreciate what you're saying. However, for example, let's say by tall, we just mean over 6 feet. Let's just say we mean over 6 feet, and that's not going to capture if someone's 6'1" or 6'5". But if we say I'm 6'7", am I tall? Well, on that proposition, on that meaning of tall, yes, the person is tall. The proposition doesn't seek to actually assess the gradient, the degree of how tall the individual is. That's one, yeah. So that would be using a bivalent truth. Another view you can take is, well, the truth itself of the proposition is some sort of non-Boolean type of answer, which is a much more fringe type of view. So if I say something is bad, you can qualify that. That's fine. You can say yes, it's bad. However, I'd like to tell you that it's not as bad as this. That's fine. But it's a very different view from saying the truth value of the proposition is non-Boolean.
Well,
you appreciate that?
I don't think. I'm not sure if I said that. I'm sorry.
Well, you said it's like degrees. You said degrees of truth is the only reason I'm bringing this up. Because there's like things like fuzzy walking.
I gotcha. So I think, and forgive me if I'm wrong. Please recapitulate if I am. But I think being humans and farms and grinding up for meat would be really terrible. I think that doing the same to various animals is less terrible. And you were trying to say, look, why is it that if we put humans in the same thing, why would it be different level of terrible? Am I with you?
More specific than that, so more precise than that, I'm asking what proposition, by proposition I just mean a statement that is capable of taking on the truth value. What propositions are true of the animal that, if true, in the human context, would give you the same moral evaluation in terms of the scale? So you can, for example, I'll just give you a quick example. Yeah, sure. Oh, yeah, sure.
I can answer that directly. So I think, if we go back to the height example, for animals that are 5 feet tall versus, let's say, humans are 6 feet tall, I can't say that the proposition of truth about the animals is that insufficient height to be morally considered. What I would say is that because they're shorter and because I value taller things more, I think they matter less morally. Is that sufficient to get at what you're asking?
Yeah, so so if you can say, for example, well, the degree of how bad something is the degree to how tall or short someone is. And so humans are taller than animals, so killing a human is a greater degree of bad than killing an animal.
Right, so I have potentially 8 of those.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So let's I'm gonna write them down. Right? So
I have them written down if you want. Can I post these somewhere?
Oh yeah, you can post them. Yeah, you can post them in general chat.
Okay, general, hold on. I'm new to the Discord. Copy.
You can post them in Avi only. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. If you're able to post them there.
You're assuming I know anything about what anything is.
Yeah. You went into general chat. He went into general voice chat. Let me get him back in here. Where are you, Mike? No! even know where he is. Oh, here he is. Yeah, he's a president. There we go. All right. Well,
complete ineptitude. I've canceled.
Voice chat, just text.
Yeah. So okay. So where do I find that?
So it's right underneath the stage. And you'll see where there's like, see if you expand general. It says actually right above the stage. Actually, there's debater only. You can post there. Can you click on the debater only thing? Yeah.
Yes. My message is too long.
You can do it. You can parse it out. You can do like the first half.
Is it 2,000 characters? I'm really sorry about that. You know what?
You can mention them, and I can type them out if it's something that's prohibiting the process.
Stage 1. I go to debater.
So all you got debater only. You see where it says debater only?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just like click on the debater only section, and then you see where you have like this message like area where you can type things. There you go. I see you typing. Okay. All right. That's the first. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's the first. Was it 5?
So I see 4.
Okay, first 4. Excellent. And the last 4. Okay.
Okay.
Go.
All right. So I'm just gonna read through all of these. So pain, suffering spectrum, eating highly reflective and intelligent humans who have vivid memory of a good life and expected to continue to be good. Eating insects, crustaceans, fish. Brian Key. Well, we can talk about Brian Key and his work because. Okay, so what I'm going to do is a point of process here, Mike, because I actually have read Key and Rose's papers, and I think they have huge problems. But I'm going to table that. I'm going to table that for the point of discussion, and I'm going to deal with mammalians and avians first. And if we have time, I'm happy to get to the Key and Rose papers on fish sentience. We can talk about that as well.
Sure. So I can just kind of read off the general gist of stuff. Unfortunately, the thing didn't copy completely. So these little box-looking things between good and eating, for example, in that first one, should be an arrow.
Oh, okay. It should be. It's greater or less than, right?
It's a spectrum. Yeah, it's a spectrum.
Yeah. If I get this right, so eating highly reflective and intelligent humans have vivid memory of good life and expected to continue to be good is a greater harm than, or greater badness than eating insects, crustaceans, fish. Fish probably don't feel pain. Lab-grown meat, which tends to come at a really good upcoming spectrum. More on that later. So it would just be and lab-grown meat would be even better than that, for example. Am I getting that right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Cool. The second one is so as I said before, just to table, I actually just want to make it clear to everyone that I do contest the papers of Brian Key and Rose, but for the purposes of this conversation, or at least this part of the conversation, we're just going to be talking about cows, chickens, and pigs. And if we have time, we can talk about the key and roast papers. Okay.
I don't know if I'm 100% in agreement with that dichotomy.
What do you mean dichotomy?
When you say, yeah, so like when you say you're a vegan, I eat like a pound of shrimp in front of you, ostensibly you would find that distasteful in some sense. But if not, then are you really vegan?
Well, I'm not talking about shrimp. Well, Mike, I'm not talking about shrimp. I'm talking about teleosteosis. No, I don't eat shrimp, but that's not what I'm referring to. It's not my point of disagreement with Brian Keith. It's going to be more of a gray area.
Yeah. I'm sorry, that was more like a note to myself to bring up. I didn't mean to.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so just to be clear, my contention. Yeah, my contention with Brian Key, my primary contention with Brian Key refers to teleosteofish and their neurology and then the philosophy of mind behind it. Okay.
So I can just kind of go through these real quick. That's just sort of some of
them. Yeah, sure. If you want to do it, yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so the pain and suffering spectrum is like, if you say, okay, it's why is eating some animals less bad to you than eating humans? And I could say, well, humans probably suffer and feel pain to a greater extent than many, though maybe not all kinds of animals. And there's a spectrum that starts roughly from very highly, sort of personally reflective and intelligent humans who have very good memory of their own life and expect that good life to continue, which sets up a sort of Eastern philosophy, understanding of suffering, and then all the way through, let's say, insects. Almost best point, Labrador meat the best, but insects, gee whiz, do they feel pain? I would say probably not. And do they suffer? Almost certainly not. They definitely don't have the hormone function to do that. They don't have cortex. So, if you're saying, how bad is it? Why, or rather, if you think
I actually should ask these questions. So, just to be clear, I'm sorry to interrupt. All of these things, I take it to be, because I take it to be that these are things that are differences between humans and the animals. They're the symmetry breakers, if you will. That they're not just like your framework of evaluating things. They're the symmetry breakers that make that, if true, that if we equalize all of these 8 things, for example, here's where it's ultimately going to land. Like if all of these 8 things, if we took a human and had all of these 8 things like the same as the animal, like we would have the same moral evaluation as the animal. We come to a point of moderate to severe, but moderate to severely bad, but it won't keep me awake at night if I eat the flesh.
No, that's not the case.
Okay, so that's the thing. Okay, well that's the question I'm asking for. All right, but so
I don't think there's such a thing as a symmetry breaker. I don't subscribe to that level of analysis.
Well, do you know what I mean when I say symmetry breaker?
Yeah.
I just mean a difference.
Right, but I think that this is a very deep ethical discussion that has to sort of be very holistically and from the ground up discussed, because if we don't agree on all the premises of how we evaluate moral morality and moral systems, then we find ourselves in situations where we present ourselves with a kind of sort of, well, here's the situation, why don't you agree if this is the case? And I would disagree for reasons that would be described in these 8 points.
So I just want to be clear here. So, yeah. So, because here's the thing. Because I'm not asking about how you evaluate morality. That's not the type of question I'm here. No, not at all. Not the primary reason you were here is I was interested in knowing if you can produce, if you can give me any sort of answer on what propositions would change in the human context, that if we equalize those propositions to the animal context, that you would have the same moral evaluation. Because you're saying there's a difference in your moral evaluation, right? And I'm just wondering, what propositions would need to change about those 2 different contexts where you're giving the different evaluations.
Yes.
That you would give such that you would give the same evaluation. Now, well, the first thing I want you to I want you to do before we get first I just want those propositions. Like I don't want, and we can get into how you evaluate things after that. But the first thing I want is just the propositions.
I'll just shoot those right off.
Some of these are propositions, by the way. The first one seems to be one. Like, it seems to be, I agree with you, for example, that that humans are going to have a highly reflective and intelligent, vivid memory of a good life, whereas animals may not have as much of that. I agree with that. I'm just asking if this is like one of the eight.
Let me just get right to it.
Yeah, sure.
Let me just get right to it. So, I'll phrase it a little bit more to how you would like me to phrase it in this regard. Though I think for like truly the best communication, it can be phrased in more than any way. But so, if animals, in quotations, could experience as much depth of pain and suffering as humans, that would move the needle for me. If the killing and eating of humans is somehow detached from a political precedent of future killing and eating of humans, if that sets up, then I would be more inclined to see humans as animals. That number 2 is a real nasty one, though. This will just go away. I could explain that one in more depth if you'd like, but I'll move on real quick and maybe we look at that one if you'd like. If animals, to the degree that animals have more of an ability to reciprocate human rights back to humans in a variety of situations, I would consider them more human-like and be incrementally more upset when they died. Environmental effects is, you could disregard.
Well, let's just do the other way. I'm asking the question with respect to the other way around. So, like, to the degree that if humans had the degree of reciprocating rights to the same degree as cows did,
Totally. Right, so for example, if you ask me what I felt worse about eating a human that had a really comprehensive understanding of morality and was ready to treat me with my full complement of individual rights, versus if I would rather, like, a gun to my head, I have to eat someone is a total sociopath who doesn't understand what deep level rights are, I would be more comfortable eating that person, and then a person like Hitler, who I would probably rejoice in eating because he is a
Well, that's going to be a category. Well, Hitler's going to be a category error, because that's not going to be true of either the animal or the human. Because neither the animal or the human is going to massacre. Well, I'm not talking. Yeah, but just to be clear, I was talking about chickens and cows and pigs, and I agree it might be true.
Well, this is not a vegan debate; it's a chicken-cow-pig debate.
Yeah, I take veganism to be a heuristic to proxy our values. Yeah,
so you can't use a proxy of values generally if you're willing to exclude a variety of events.
I actually would support killing quite a few of those predators, depending if they're odd or even or. So if by vegan you just mean that's gonna be my.
You're not an animal rights activist.
It depends what you mean by animal rights activist. Maybe
most animal rights activists don't go out and kill lions and stuff like that.
Well, I'm not going out and doing it. I'm not going out and doing it either. I'm just giving you my value judgment on whether I consider it okay or not. And I do consider it okay to kill. Yeah. So with respect
to pigs, yeah. I'll give you the pig example. So if you are in a room with a pig and it is sufficiently large, it becomes sufficiently hungry, it is very likely to eat you. If a vegan is in a room with a pig, a vegan has a deep sense of rights reciprocity as a sort of mentally ascended human, then the chance of a vegan eating a pig is very, very small, much less than the pig eating a human. So
what I would want is to
respect human rights, I would be less inclined to eat that pig.
Yeah, wouldn't happen.
If you give me a vegan that would be okay with eating other people, then I would be fine.
Yeah, just so one second, Mike. So, and this may be an issue where we have to clarify, because the cow, if it got hungry, wouldn't actually eat you, but So there are also mentally handicapped humans that if they get really, really hungry, they may eat you as well. So what I want to do is I want to go in the direction of the traits being the things that are true of the animals making them true of the humans. And what I want to know is at the end of the day, here's where this is all going to land. At the end of the day, when we equalize all of these differences, the answer is presumably going to be in terms of doing the same thing to the human that we're doing to these animals. I consider it bad. I consider it moderately to severely bad, but it's not going to keep me out of the time.
Yes.
So at the end of the day, if we equalize all of those things, is that going to be where the answer is going to lie?
Yeah, maybe. We'll see.
I presume that they would have to be that way, or else we'd get a contradiction otherwise.
Sure. We'll see if we get to a contradiction. I suppose you're probably interested in either a capitulation or a contradiction.
Yeah. Yeah. So if we
Well,
get
environmental effects. You want to keep going?
Yeah, we can get. Yeah, we can.
I think we're on the same
Okay.
page.
So.
Yeah.
So we went through just to recap, we went through pain and suffering. So like what now we're gonna do is we're gonna take a human, we're gonna say, okay, we take a human and we needle down their degree of reflecting intelligently on their good life to the same degree that a cow can reflect on their life. Okay.
Right.
And in political precedent, we shift the needle of society and their attitudes such that they think it's okay. It's more permissible
that's not what that says. So if you'd like to accept that, then that's the case. So I think that if you make it okay to eat some humans and not others, you are giving government the power to choose who gets eaten and who does not. It is similar to giving the power to government to be okay to kill some people for who they are and who they're not. That sets up a real nasty precedent that would likely lean out of control and destroy civilized society when some groups of humans, just because they're in political power, shift that degree of when it's okay to eat, when it's not, when it's okay to violate other people's rights, and when it's not, into the direction that favors them and disfavors everyone else. There is good game theoretic framework and very good historical.
But before, wait, Brian, I just want to be clear. So is number two a difference? Is number two one of the propositions that are true of the animal that are not true of the human? That if they were true of the human would change your needle of evaluation? Is that the type of thing that 2 is?
So 2 is probably more like a 1 or 0. Are you human or are you not? So it's difficult to surmise how you would change that.
Okay, no, I would just ask what you mean. No, in that case, okay, so we could simplify it then. We don't have to talk about political precedent, we could just say human then. Right?
I don't know what that means.
Okay, well then, but then, if you don't know what it means, then why are you telling me that it's a proposition that's true of one and not true of the other?
Because animals are not human. It's definitely true of one, not true.
Okay, so then by that you mean so wait, but then why are we saying so? A couple questions. So then I'm asking you if that's all 2 is, why are we getting a whole paragraph here? Why can't we just replace all that with the difference that's true of one that's not true of the other is that one is a human, one is a non-human.
Because there's a very good justification. Because I think in the end of this debate.
Okay, but that wasn't what I was asking for. No, but I wasn't asking for a justification for that symmetry. Right. So as a point of process, Mike, as a point of process. So if you so here are the just a quick terms for when we each cut each other off. So if if you ask me a question, for example, and by my answer it's clear that I'm not answering the question that you're asking me, please cut me off. Also, other terms, I highly encourage you to do so. Because the reason I encourage you to do so is because the time it would take to wait till the answer is completed, if it's clear the answer is not even addressing the question, it's more respectful for you to interrupt me and cut me off than if you were to let me answer a question with a non-answer. Other criteria are misrepresentations and things like that. So if I'm cutting you off, it's not for no. Yeah, sure.
So I think that there's a potential to see an emergent answer. Someone is sort of giving right away, stepping towards something that is going to be for sure wrong. But I think it can come out in the end that it actually did make sense. So I'm not willing to lay judgment that point.
Well, it's not an issue of making sense. It would be an issue of whether it's actually answering the question that's being asked. Because you can give an answer that makes sense, but it may not be an answer to the actual question.
That risks getting us into a form of sort of like intellectual entrapment, where if you have me answer some very, very specific questions and you consider other answers just totally out of scope, it ends up painting my position or your position into one in which we simply answered a sort of a sequence of incrementally more absurd questions and then are made to be either the villain or morally wrong or we were.
I'm not interested, Mike. I'm not interested in anything like trying to make you out to be a villain or anything. The reason I'm being very methodical and being very rigorous is just because if I don't do that, I'm not going to actually get to what your values actually are.
Sure. I'm actually literally trying to describe my values to you.
No. But before I do that, the first step I want to do is I want to know where what would need to be changed? What would need to be changed such that you would actually give a different evaluation in terms of your values, in terms of your evaluation of the situation. So, what I just want to know. Okay, I understand that, but I'm not. I just want to know if number 2 is a. Let's just start from the beginning. So, is number 2 a proposition that's true of the animal that, if true of the human, would shift your evaluation?
No. It's true of the animal, if true of the human. So, number 2 is a statement that I think if you start doing some stuff to people, it destroys society very quickly. So we shouldn't do it to other people.
Okay, so number 2 is
animals because that does not destroy human society.
Okay, so is number. Well, I wasn't asking if it destroys society or not. I was just asking if number 2 is. Okay, I understand that might be. Well, I understand that might be your. That's fine. You can have that concern, but that wasn't answering the question. So the question I asked the question I was asking wasn't if you're concerned with destroying society or anything. The question I was asking is number 2 a proposition? So is it a statement that's capable, that is truth apt, that is true in the context of the animal, that if true in the context of the human, would sway your normative evaluation?
So that's what I was asking. People.
I don't. Okay, so
I think it would be wrong.
Is that the? Okay, so is number 2 just people then? Because I'm not understanding what number. So what is number 2? So we got. So
I was trying to
but it was the number 2. Wait, before that. So I was asking that's fine. I was asking a yes or no question. So the question was is that
the
actually
question is unanswerable as yes or no.
Wait, so just to be clear,
not all questions can be answered yes or no.
Is it a proposition?
I'm not sure.
Is number 2 a proposition?
Number 2 reads as exactly as you see it. I'm trying to explain it.
By proposition, I just mean a statement that's capable of taking on a truth value. So, for example, it's okay. I'll explain.
Sure.
So, So, for example, there are certain things that are statements that are propositions. For example, I went to the park. That is a statement that's capable of being either true or false. However, there are certain statements that are not capable of being truth apt. For example, if I say, "How are you, Mike?" To say that would be true or statement would be true or false doesn't really make sense. Yeah, exactly. Okay, sorry. If I say a statement, I say like "ew." If I just say "ew," is that true or false?
It's not sufficiently communicative to tell us anything.
Great, but the point. Okay, well, so then
it's not a statement. That's one word.
If I say, well, wait a minute, it is communicative to tell you something. I'm emoting certain thing. If I emote something, like if I start,
then it's true or false. It's true. No, I believe that you are emoting.
Okay, right. Well, but that wasn't the statement. If the statement is literally just ew, or I'm going to start crying, go wow wow wow. That statement, that utterance, that's not going to be.
That's an utterance, not a statement.
That's fine. We can. So that utterance is not going to be a proposition. We agree on that. It's not going to be capable of being true or false. Okay. Now it does give us information. It may give us information. If someone's crying, it may take that and being okay. Well, it seems like something might be going on. Like there may be some sort of But it's still not going to be a true or false thing. Now the first question I'm asking is number 2. Is that just going to be? Is it a proposition? So it
is a complex proposition.
That's the first question. Okay, so it is capable of being true or false.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Now, is it a proposition? Okay, that's fine. Is it true of the animal context?
No. I mean, I can recapitulate the statement to you if you like.
No, I just want to know if it's true of the animal context.
It's true. It's not true of the animal context.
Okay, so that would be a category of them. So the thing I want to know are the things that are true of the animal context that, if true of the human context, would shift your normative evaluation. Now, if two, whatever it is.
Gotcha. Then it's not true. It's not true of the animal context.
Okay. So then is what are the things that are true of the animal context, that if true of the human context, would make it give you the same normative evaluation of the human context.
So
That's
I'm
the question
saying
I'm
it's
asking.
bad to kill animals. Let's say I'm saying it's not as bad to kill animals because they're not people. So then I guess I am making a statement that is true of the animal context. They're animals, therefore killing them is okay. And then if we tried to take that and transform it into a human context, we would have to turn the animals into people. And I would say that then it's as bad. Oh. Sorry, folks.
Alright, sorry about that. I dropped for a second. So, yeah, so what I was just asking is, So what I was just asking is the second thing that you've written, is the second proposition, is it a proposition that's true of the animal context?
So the second thing is not, I don't think, phrased exactly to reflect that logical interpretation. It's more of a complex statement.
That's fine. Is there a way you think you can rephrase it such that it would be true of the animal context and not true of the human context?
Yes. It's true of the animal context, but not true. It already is true. Oh, so I don't think animals are people, so that's true of the animal context.
Yeah, that's fine. So if you can reword it such that it's a... Yeah, sure.
So if we were to equalize to symmetry break, I suppose, then we would have to make the animals humans.
All right. So is number 2 just to say that the proposition is that it is not the case that the organism is a person? Is that what number? Because that would be true of the animal context and not. Okay, cool.
Correct. Yes.
And then we're gonna. Yeah. So I would just ask. So then I would ask what you mean by person.
Human being.
DNA.
Okay. Human and what? In genetic definition. Okay. So having a given proximity to some archetypal human genome that is sequenced, having some given degree of proximity.
Yeah, so just a species definition of humans as aliens and stuff.
Well, that's a different definition. Species. Are you talking about the biological species concept definition of human?
Sure. Yeah. Depending on.
All right. Because that actually is a. Yeah. Because the thing is that biological species concept biological species concept definition. It's a little bit of a technical thing, but it doesn't actually give. It doesn't actually define humans. It just defines whether beings are of the same species, but it wouldn't be capable of defining whether beings are human or non-human.
So you take a sample of 1,000 humans, and then you have machine intelligence tell you.
Well, now you're just. Yeah, but now you're just. No, but my question is, what is a human? And you're giving me. So what I want is like a definition of that or some idea.
I don't know if we're on the same playing field if you're not so sure what a human is.
No, to be clear, I'm not saying I'm not so sure what a human is. The reason I'm asking it may seem weird. Yeah, it may seem weird that I'm asking it. I can explain why I'm asking it, and it's not weird at all.
Sure.
Yeah. So the reason I'm asking is not because I don't have like some common domain understanding of what a human is. The reason it is because on our peripheral understandings of what a human is, actually people have widely different ideas, and it's going the individuals in question that we're talking about are going to be on those peripheries, and so it's very relevant for me to ask this question, even though it may seem funny at the outset because we have such a common domain understanding. So if we go with the genetic example, yeah, go ahead.
Anything birthed by human mother.
Okay, but that's just going to be a self-referential definition. So that's actually going to be an incoherent definition.
I gotcha. Yeah. So any member of the species, subspecies, Homo sapiens, sapiens, anatomically modified.
And by Homo sapiens, sapiens, we mean human?
That's exactly what human means.
Okay, then that's also going to be a self-referential definition and will be incoherent.
No. So Homo sapiens sapiens is the scientific definition of what humans are.
I understand what it is.
It is not created in modern biology.
I am. Oh, I'm very familiar with that. But that's not my contention. My contention is that by Homo sapiens.
Point, I think mentally retarded people are still human, and so are people always.
That's not what I asked you either.
Is that what you're getting at?
No, that's not what I asked you either. No, I didn't ask. Depending on what you give me. Yeah. So, the issue is just going to be. I understand what humans are defined as Homo sapiens sapiens, but that doesn't give me any clarity on the peripheries of our understanding of what it constitutes to be a human, because then I would just ask what constitutes the peripheries of our understanding of being Homo sapiens sapiens. So
that's just for the biological literature. I would just refer you to a common biology textbook.
I understand that. I've read the common biology textbooks. I've read plenty of biology textbooks. That was my field of focus.
You're still ambiguous about what a human is.
But nope, I'm not ambiguous about the human, but I am ambiguous about the periphery of your understanding of what a human is, which is why I'm trying to assess it.
To test the periphery.
Okay, sure. Yeah, sure. So, for example, if I say a human is having a given proximity of genes to the sequence of what is called referent mention of the term human. So I'm not using a self-referential definition. As sequenced in the referent Human Genome Project, then there's going to be some sort of
No, you said human genome. That sounds awfully self-referential.
No. So, that's going to it's actually not, because there's a use-mention distinction of the term, and I'm being clear that I'm using the mention term. In linguistics, there's a use term, and then there's a mention term, so there's actually an equivocation which they refer to different things. So that's fine. I don't have to make it that complex. I can just say certain given proximity of genes that are sequenced, and we can point to the sequence that has been done. And there's going to be, now, as we take genes and mutate them or change them, and by that we could just say it's just a whole bunch of propositions, whether it's an A or a T or a C or G. And if they're different, to a given degree, at some point, there may be some threshold, there may not be some threshold, but at some point, we'll reach something that is not human. So that would be an example of trying to assess our periphery in terms of our understanding of human.
What's an example of that actually next time?
Yeah, sure. So, for example, if we take a look at a chimpanzee, for example, and we would consider it not a human on the genetic view, and the reason being on that view is because there's a sufficient amount of genetic differences between the chimpanzee and this being that we're calling a human. So there's some sort of like a scale, as you mentioned. You can tally up the genetic differences, and if we scale it far enough out, then at some point we wouldn't be considering it a human. That's one way. That's not the only way you could define a human. There are other ways of defining a human. But this is just one example of defining it such that I can assess the periphery of understanding. On your view, what an individual what things would need to change such that the proposition this being is a human would no longer be true anymore would no longer be a symmetry break.
Say, comprehensive group of modern biologists would assess it to be a human, then I would be in agreement. If they would assess non-human, then I would be in agreement. I would refer to them.
Okay, all right, no, that's fine. That's a coherent definition. So if we have a comprehensive group of biologists that so the symmetry break would be that have written, so we can say they've written the biology textbook, and it's in the biology textbook that the individual in question in the animal context is not a human, so that's something it is not a human, so it is not a human is a proposition that's true of the non-human animal context, and it is not true of the human context. That's fine. And the reason it's and the reason it's true of the animal but it's not true of the human is because the group of biologists and the textbooks that they've written have stated that these individuals are not human, and these other individuals are human.
Yes, but not arbitrarily. They've
Okay.
stated it with a lot of.
Okay, but if that's the case, then we're going to have to delve into what those things are, because if it was just that simpliciter, we can move on to 3. But if there's more to it that determines whether something turns on it, then we're going to have to ask what those are.
I don't think we have to do that, because if Homo sapiens sapiens are all that I consider human, I think that pretty much covers what I think is human.
Well, the reason we do have to do it.
Literally dispute that.
The reason I will have to do it is because what I would the ultimate goal here is what I want to know is what things would need to change such that what propositions would need to change of these animals that if they change to how many or in what specific propositions we need to change such that we would now consider these animals Homo sapiens sapiens. And I'm trying to assess the periphery of it.
Right. So you're talking about like sort of transhuman ascension of animals into human.
You can call it whatever you want, but the ultimate thing I'm trying to nail down here is if we were to, so for example, in the example you gave, it would actually be very simple to understand what propositions we need to change of the animals to that such that we would consider them Homo sapiens sapiens, right? So in the first example you gave, it would just be the case that if the biologists and their textbooks happen to say that these cows and pigs and chickens were Homo sapiens sapiens, and their textbooks had written that Homo sapiens sapiens, then they would be Homo sapiens sapiens. However, if you're going to say, well, there's more to it than that, it's not just that simpliciter, then we would have to ask what those are in order for me to understand what it is what it is that would need to change, such that I would consider those pigs and cows Homo sapiens sapiens.
Yeah, so you'd have to take like everything that makes cow different from a human on any measurable quality, and take the average cow and make it like the average human, including sort of intelligence, social capability, linguistic capability, and all of those things, and then at some point a cow becomes convincingly human and no longer a cow.
I'm not sure you agree with that, and I'll give you an example. So, for example, if we took one cow, I don't think you agree with that. We would have to take the average cow and make them to have all of their characteristics to be the average human. So, for example, if we just took, I can just ask you this question: if we took a single cow and we changed the propositions of them such that all of their qualities are now the same qualities of your average human, is it now not a human? Is the cow not Homo sapiens sapiens? Okay, but notice how you haven't changed the average cow. You've only changed the individual cow.
Oh, sure. I was just trying to keep it more simple at speaking
of
okay. We're going to be talking about entire species, not single individual cows.
I'm I'm talking about it in the abstract. So it is. I think it actually may be better to think about it in the individuals for this part of the conversation. So this you have like a cow and you have a human. So what things we need to change of the cow? The what?
Turn the cow into a human.
Wait, I'm sorry. I didn't hear what you said.
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Sure. Kind of finicky now with all this. So you and I are fast enough already. So you would have to make the cow human, essentially just take every single quality that you consider cow-like and alter it to where it's human-like. Human.
Okay, so are you saying that we just take all of the propositions that are true of the cow but not true of the human and change them such that they're true that they're no longer true of the cow and we equalize them? Okay, so, but I don't think that. Do you think that's going to be the periphery? That's a sufficiency. I agree that's going to be a sufficiency criteria, but I don't think that's going to be a necessary. I think that's going to be I think that's going to be a sufficiency criteria, but I don't think that's going to be a necessary criteria on your view even. So, for example, let's say we change all the propositions of a cow such that they are the same of this human individual, except this human individual still has a cow tail. Like the proposition, the cow tail is there, is still true. Would you say that? Yeah, but I think at that point, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but I think at that point you would say that it's still the case that this individual is a human.
No.
So if a human has a... Okay, fine. So if a human so basically if you took me, for example, and I had a cow tail, like you would say I'm not Homo sapien sapien.
No, if I took you and ascended you all the way up from cow to human, but your cow tail remained, I would say you're not a Homo sapiens.
Okay.
So that's exactly what we're talking about.
So if all the propositions of... So if I have...
I think the process matters is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, you're saying whether they're... Yeah. So what I want you to say... Yeah, that's fine. So what I want you to do is just picture possible worlds then. So you have like a whole bunch of different... Because you mentioned possible worlds in terms of what have done otherwise in a different universe. So just imagine you have a series of different possible worlds where each different possible world represents a difference in the truth value of the given proposition. Right? So there's no temporal how you got there consideration because each stage in the changing of the process of the propositional change is just a different universe with a different set of true and false propositions.
Well, this no longer applies to
that. Yeah, that's fine. That's the point. In fact. Okay. So what I'm asking...
I'll take you to task on that later.
I mean, that's going to be fine, because... All right, but anyway.
Because you're going to try to make it apply to our world, right?
I'm going to try to make... So I'm going to... It depends. If there's some sort of contradiction that is quantified over all worlds, then it will be trivially true that it would apply to our world. And if I can show that logically, then yes, I will make it apply to our world. Rightfully so.
Gotcha.
But it depends on the nature. Yeah. So what I'm asking now then is to just envision. I don't want you to. Here's what I don't want you to envision. I don't want you to envision like we take. So this was just for the reason I gave this is in the outset is just because it's a simpler way of like conceptualizing it. It's just simple. It's easier to conceptualize taking account of changing things about them, like this trait equalizing process. However, if you're going to say that the actual process matters, that the temporal, like what it started out with matters, we can easily just disambiguate that by just imagining it in terms of a series of possible worlds. And that's really the true way to visualize it. It's just only to be visualized that way if someone were to say that the process actually doesn't matter. And then we can disambiguate that. We can hand-wave that away by just saying, well, this is just a series of different logically possible worlds where a given set of propositions are true or false, and there are a series of logically possible worlds. Individual are calling a cow, and this individual are calling a human. And then the question is just going to be, in that series, at what point are we going to call this individual a Homo sapiens sapiens? If we start off looking at the logically possible world where we
refer to biology textbook.
Okay, that's not... So I'm trying to understand what you are giving me when you say that. So are you just saying that if in this logically possible world the biology textbook would say they're Homo sapiens sapiens, then they would be?
Yes. If all of the things that create a human according to modern biology and disambiguate that human from everything else are true, then it is a human. If not all of them true, it can be significantly human-like, but not human according to the fundamental definition as this.
All right, so it seems like you're using the use mention of human there, so that's just going to be another self-referential answer. So that's going to be incoherent to me. I'm not going to get any answer.
So biologists pretty much agree on what a human is, and when asked why they think a certain thing is a human, they can get into all sorts of things. Well, humans are typically birthed by other people of the same species. Humans are people who can trace their genetic lineage back to Homo erectus, for example, things like that. So I would say a pretty easy definition of what is a human is, can you trace your lineage back to Homo erectus?
And by Homo erectus,
anything.
wait. So so Neanderthals would be human on your view.
Yes.
Okay, so completely and if a cow, if it was the case that a cow had its lineage traceable back to Homo erectus, then the cow would also be a human on your view.
I think so. Yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with that. I think.
Okay. All right. Cool. So now we actually have. We don't even have to go into the series of possible worlds now. So because this is a coherent definition. So by human we just mean having an ancestor that is traceable to Homo erectus. And so if a frog had their ancestors traceable to Homo erectus, then they would be Homo sapiens sapiens. If a cow did, they would be Homo sapiens sapiens. If a chicken did, they would be Homo sapiens sapiens, etc.
Yes, in our world.
Okay. Okay, cool. Okay. And, oh wait, no. If hypothetically a cow were to have its lineage traceable to Homo sapiens sapiens, would the cow be Homo sapiens sapiens? Like that's what I'm asking. If it was the case.
No.
Sure, I'm okay with that as a hypothesis.
Okay, cool. All right, cool. Okay, well, as a definition.
Hypothetical.
Take a hypothesis. Yeah, the point is just going to be, the whole reason I'm doing this, Mike, is just because I'm trying to. Well, it's fine if you're not committed to one, but the whole reason I'm doing this is because I need to be able to, in order to find out my goal, which is to find out where your valuation changes when all these propositions change. I'm going to need to know. That's fine. That's compatible with what I'm saying. In order to find out where it's changing on a spectrum,
why are you trying to find where it changes?
I'm trying to find where it changes because I want to ask you if these propositions were the case for a human, if it wouldn't be actually the case that you would have the same evaluation. And I want to see if that answer
would be different to the extent that they're similar.
Yeah, I understand that. And so I want to know what those. And so the reason I'm doing this is because I want to know what those propositions are, such that I can equalize them, and I can ask myself if what you're saying makes any sense to me, or if what you're saying, more accurately aligns with my values. And the only way for me to do that is to actually understand what those things are. The only way I know how, anyway, is to actually understand what those things are, and to actually go through them and disambiguate and do it methodically. I'm not trying to do it to be a jerk or anything like that. I'm being very rigorous because I don't know how I'm going to. Okay, cool. So okay, cool. So by two, we just mean human, and by human we mean Homo sapiens sapiens. By Homo sapiens sapiens, we just mean having a lineage that traces back to Homo erectus. And so if it was the case, so then the question would just be, if the humans, then the question would just be if what we're calling humans now did not have their lineage traced back. So if you or me, if we found out tomorrow that it turns out that lineage did not trace back to Homo erectus, it traced back to something else, then we would not consider ourselves Homo sapiens sapiens. Right. Okay, cool. All right. So then we can.
Then we would be bereft of our human rights.
I'm sorry, we would be bereft?
We would become bereft of our human rights. We would no longer have our human rights.
Okay, cool. Got it.
We are no longer human.
Okay, understood. Okay, so if it turned out that we had some archaeologists or anthropologists that they made some discovery, and it turned out that we did not actually. Yeah. It turns out everything else is the same. It's just except for 1 and 2, but then we would not be. Everything else is the same, but we would not be Homo sapiens sapiens on that definition. Okay, cool. We agree. All right. So then, I think I have a good understanding now of what number 2 is, the second symmetry breaker. Now we can go to the third one. So the third one says rights, reciprocity, ability. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but I just take that to mean so eating humans that can understand rights at a deep self-referential level and reciprocate them. So animals would be greater than animals that are going to be easily trained to reciprocate basic rights. Okay. So I just take that to be like, we interact with each other. We can respect other people's wishes. We can think about ourselves, and we can realize that we have certain wishes, and we would like other people to respect those wishes. And therefore, like, we can understand that there's some expectation that I respect other people's wishes. That kind of thing. Is that like a fair assessment of what rights, reciprocity, ability? Okay.
Seems like it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. And so is that now? The cow is going to have some degree of rights reciprocity ability.
Let me just make it super straightforward real quick. So if a pig was next to you in a room and it wouldn't eat you because it valued your life as an independent entity, I would be way more uncomfortable eating pigs and almost certainly would have to eat it.
All right. So in the case of a cow, then, so
doesn't really value as an independent entity, but does not have the dentition or the meat hunger or the desire to kill for food another human being. So I would put in kind of a neutral category, and then something like a crocodile put in the active aggressive category.
Yeah. All right. Maybe it would be more helpful to do all of these and just ambiguate with the species then. So we can talk about the cow then.
That's why it's a little different for all of us.
Yeah. That's fine. Yeah, we can go through each one. So for the cow. So if the cow will have some degree of rights reciprocity ability.
I don't think it has any degree of rights reciprocity ability. I think if it's frightened, it tramples you and feels nothing, no kind of remorse for someone who doesn't know, probably wouldn't even remember that it trampled you, something like that. Wouldn't be guilt-ridden, would fall asleep the same way that night. That's as far as I can understand.
Oh, so it's not some sort of like. So maybe I misunderstood what you mean by rights reciprocity. I took that to mean some sort of behavioral. But it's also not just behavioral, it's also like some sort of understanding that you would so it would just be neutral. Am I correct in saying that, like, on your view, it would just be neutral? Because the cow is just not reflecting on whether you have rights or not? Is that?
Probably doesn't have a concept of rights. It will not honor your rights. It's simply just going to violate them most of the time as a matter of course.
Okay.
It's not programmed.
Yeah. All right. So an individual that. So we're talking about. Yeah, I think that's a good. Yeah. So an individual that, in the overwhelming majority of cases, it's not it's just going to not violate your rights, but it's not going to do any. Sociopath.
Sociopath. Someone who doesn't really see other humans as human and doesn't really, so for example, if I'm a sociopath and I'm driving my car and there's a little girl crossing the road on her bike and I'm really late to a doctor's appointment, I just fucking ran right through her because whatever, she's just something in the road. If I'm a cow and I'm sufficiently scared or something analogous to being late, and there's a kid crossing the road, I run right through the fucking kid. Probably doesn't bother me at all. I go and
all right. Like, it's kind of like, and this is where I would just ask kind of like certain mentally handicapped individuals. Like they can be like.
Correct. I just say sociopaths, because sociopaths are mentally handicapped as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Well, the only reason it took me off of it is because sociopathy is it's like a technical term that in psychiatry, and there's like a certain DSM criteria that's used for
sociopathic-like behavior. Sort of no consideration for others as moral entities.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, you don't have to use the same. I'm not trying to say you have to use the same term as DSM-5 or whatever. I was just trying to understand what you meant by that. But yeah, so I just take it to mean that there's there's just this neutral consideration for you. They're in a situation.
Possibly no consideration at all.
Yeah, no consideration at all. But on the overwhelming likely of cases, though, would not end up harming you as a matter of course.
For the cow, yes. For the pig, no. For the chicken,
yeah.
All right, we'll go. If the chicken is human sized, then fuck it.
Yeah. Yeah, but let's go one at a time. So with the cow, then as a matter of course.
You just do the cow.
Okay, well, so for the cow, as a matter of course, we agree that it's not going to do you anything. It may not do you any favors, but it's not and it may not consider your rights, but in the overall majority of cases, it's not going to violate your rights as a matter of course.
Depends on the gender and age, but like if you have a male bull, probably as a matter of course will fuck you up if you're sufficiently close.
Okay, we can talk. I mean, well,
but similar to human male and females, I think. Substantially more violent as male.
Yeah, no, I understand. We can, if you want, we can talk about female cows as well in the dairy. I mean, we can index it to a female cow, which are used for.
I think we can index it to either. I'm fine indexing it to the average cow, which is to say it's not overwhelmingly likely that it'll go out of its way to hurt you, but not exactly the safest thing in the world.
It's not going to be like I mean, so
if you visit a farm, you don't come up to a cow and try to pet it. You don't know anything about it.
No, I understand that. I wouldn't also go to like a mentally handicapped institution and try to pet like the mentally handicapped individuals, right? So I understand. So the same kind of thing there. So like, but it's still the case that in the overwhelming majority of cases, these mentally handicapped humans are not going to, violate my rights, and in the overwhelming majority of cases, these cows are not going to violate my rights. As a matter of course.
I'm not sure if that's true. I don't know.
I mean, we can just quantify over certain mentally handicapped individuals to the degree that it's true, and work from there. So there's going to be some mentally handicapped okay, fine. So working with that. Cool. We can also add that there are like easy ways to make it such that we increase that probability greatly in society. So we can take mentally handicapped individuals and we can keep them confined in certain institutions. If we need to, we can do the same with cows. We can keep them in certain areas where they're not going to hurt others if they actually would end up hurting others. So there's ways we can, if it's also the case that we can make it such that it's in the overwhelming majority likely scenario that it's not going to actually, as a matter of course, harm anyone, violate anyone's rights. Okay, we agree on that so far.
Yeah, totally. You can skip number 4 because that speaks to something that doesn't differentiate animals.
Okay, cool. And I just want to say, like, thank you. I appreciate you doing that because I think we're more on the same page now in terms of what I'm trying to get at. Okay, cool. So number 5, future life-producing enhancing potential. Killing the most productive current humans for food.
Real bad. So let me make that real specific.
Yeah, sure.
So if you so the amount of value to human life and the survivability of life in the universe, like assuming that our planet is the only bastion of life that we have yet discovered, potentially in the whole universe, I think we're all pro-life in the general sense that life is better than not life, and life continuing even in some primordial form is better than not. So, for example, what current human has a real proclivity to potentially make humans much more survivable and expand in the universe, and potentially ascend all the other animals and give them better lives. I just give easy candidate, just as an example, is somebody like Elon Musk, who could eventually, with his brilliance, end up getting us to the colonies on the moon, colonies on Mars, AI revolution, colonies all over the universe, real great thing. If we go and kill Elon Musk for food, gee whiz, we're doing a real bad thing for future all life. And all the way the other end of that is like if you eat fish and it gives you a really great sense of life enjoyment and health, and then you go on and you make great decisions in the corporate world, or treat your family really well, or pet your dog really nice, then maybe eating fish can enhance the net productivity of the entire things that are alive, conglomerate that is planet Earth. And
all right, so in terms of, if I understand this to be, so this characteristic is this ability or general tendency to increase the living organisms that exist.
Or the ability to produce value to help others, for example.
Well, what do you mean when you say value? Are you talking about utility, or are you talking about like? Let me just make
utility.
It
yes, totally. Utility as measured by the amount, the number of organisms that are going to be produced as a result of your contribution, the degree of their future survivability in any particular circumstance, and the distance from their origin location that they get to spread. So sort of the ultimate life form is one that is, really insanely productive as far as making tons of life. It makes that life really hardy and tough to kill, and it spreads that life throughout the entire universe. We can scale that all the way from like a virus, doesn't do hardly any of that shit, And then, Elon Musk does a whole lot of it. And, future radical robotic AI could just do like a gazillion times better than us. And
all right, so I would take that as so I would take that as its tendency to produce life in existence, and the index, like the type of life that would also produce more life and survive and be hardy and spread. Okay, cool. So the greater, so essentially, I take it to be that, if viruses, or I should say, if the cow, for example, like if this cow, if there was something about the cow such that there would be like these living things that would just spread all over the universe, like if it just had like some bacteria or something. These cows like have these bacteria that would like survive in outer space and spread to other planets and survive there as well. And then,
even like if the cow was a sufficiently good engineer or sufficiently good worker that worked as an administrative assistant for an engineer that was making like the biggest anti-asteroid detection and knockdown, then it could really support human life a ton.
Oh, human life. I'm sorry. Is it
about
human life or life?
All life, because the asteroid kills us all. So yeah,
wait, because it makes a difference, right? Because
sure. All life, not just human life. All life.
Okay, because the reason I'm asking is because I just want to know if there's like some kind of if there's like a bacteria or something that's like spreading everywhere. Would that like be
very valuable?
Okay, cool. All right. So if there's this, all right, cool. Okay, cool. So I take it to be that's not the case of cows that they have this tendency to spread life throughout the universe, and then humans are going to have some greater tendency to spread life throughout the universe. Okay. And if it were the case that this individual human had the same tendency to spread life throughout the universe as this cow, then it would shift your valuation somewhat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. I think I have a good understanding of number 5. And then number 6, pain, suffering of others who care. Pain of losing a lifetime.
Sorry, go ahead. Yes.
I'm just reading. So, the pain of losing a lifetime dearest loved one, even if they clear all other spectrums of concern, it would be greater than people wanting, revealing clothing makes me feel icky. So it should be. So I'm just going to ask you to, I'll say what I think, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong. And so I just take this to be like a.
How about I just tell you?
Yeah, you just tell it then. It's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
For sure.
So, for example, one concern with animal rights is that vegans deeply care about the suffering of animals, and that really, really hurts them. And doesn't that matter? Yes, I think it does matter, but I think generally more people tend to suffer personally at a deep level when humans are killed, specifically humans close to them, than people suffer to the same extent when animals are killed. So, for example, the symmetry breaker or symmetry ascension here would be, if you found me a human that the average person on Earth, per that human's killing, would be just about as like, whatever, that guy's like a fucking cow, fuck him, that would be the kind of human that would level down and make things more even.
Okay. So, I take this to be that if, so it is the case of the cow that if the cow is killed, that there would be less individuals that have pain and suffering because they care about this individual.
Less.
However, less pain and suffering. Yeah, and if it were the case for a human, so if the human in question here would, so if the human in question would be a human that did that it was not the case that they would have, if they were killed, they would have, or they would have the same amount of individuals caring about them to the same degree as the cow, for example, then that would shift your needle of evaluation.
Right.
Okay, I think I have a good understanding of 6. Now we can proceed to 7.
Sure. So number 7 is basically something like, if a lot of times what you'll have is the concept of like, well, we're trapping all these animals, we're enslaving them, they want to be free, they want to determine their own destiny. I think sort of scaled down, animals, all the way from, let's say, chimps all the way down to, alligators, have kind of less and less inclination to be free in any philosophical sense. Captivity hurts them in a sort of experiential sense less and less. So, like, just to make the point here is, like, if you put a person in a cage, he's going to be real upset that he's in a cage and really want to get out, even if there's nothing particularly to do outside the cage. If you put a crocodile in a cage and you sufficiently heat the floor, give him some water, give him a shitload of food, it's by no means going to want to go anywhere at all. And maybe that's untrue for alligators per se, but there's plenty of other animals that just kind of fucking sit there and don't give a shit. And I think that this is just to address. I wasn't. These points are not sort of phrased in your particular way, but this point was essentially designed to break down the anthropomorphization of animals that I think I've seen some folks use in order to be like, isn't this terrible? Like, well, it's not as terrible because some animals like don't want to really go anywhere, and it doesn't really hurt them in any mental sense to be in a sort of predefined locations. For example, like if you have a bald eagle or whatever that has a huge range, and you put that motherfucker in a cage, he's probably much less happy, and that's not great. But if you take some kind of animal that is fine being in a cage, or actually prefers being, like, some animals actually like being when all 3 sides touch them, sort of thing, like, like something that lives in, like, a cave or something, or some kind of, like, burrow. You put it in a burrow, it really doesn't give a fuck, and it's actually quite ideal for it, so then,
so so I think, so if I can just restate, so I just want to restate, so I take this to be that there's some degree of goal conformity or disconformity that's happening in a given context. So, for example, in the cow context, there are some goal disconformities. The cow may not want to be confined. We can observe when cows are given the opportunity to go out, they tend to care and they tend to go out. And when, we take the cow baby away from the mother, it does cry for around 3 days or so. But it doesn't do it to a degree that a human would when they would cry for months. It's not going to do it to, it's not going to be out of accord with the human's goals, because humans may have stronger goals. Is that something like, okay, cool. Yeah, okay. So it's, all right, so in the case of the cow context, it's not the case. So it is the case that there's a lower goal conformity, goal disconformity. And if it were the case for a human, so if it were true of humans that they had the same goal disconformity, so if there was a human that was being that preferred to be out but was kept in to the same degree that the cow was, and had their child ripped, if female, had their babies ripped away from them and only cried for 3 days instead of a month or so, then that would shift your needle of evaluation to that measure. Okay, cool. So I think I have a good understanding of number 7. Now we're going to go to number. Oh, okay, cool. Okay, so then what we have here to recap is we have 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. So what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to copy the ones that were symmetry breakers, and I'm just going to post them again, and I'm going to label them accordingly. So I have 1, 2, 3, and then 4 I skip, and then I have 5, 6, 7. So I'm just going to relabel them. So 4, 5, 6. Are you looking at the chat where it says debater only?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So my question is as follows then. So if we had a human where the pain and suffering that was being experienced in farming a human for their flesh, for their slaughtered flesh, was the same as that in the cow context. And if this individual, it was discovered that their origins didn't trace back to Homo erectus, and if it was the case that they were neutral, this human in question was neutral to your rights. However, in the overwhelming majority of cases, this individual, So, but I just want to get a clear picture of what we, as we said before, like if you or I weren't traced back to homosexuality, I just don't want you to like get in the picture of your head. I don't think you are, but I don't want you to get in the picture of your head like it's like some alien or something, or some like rock or toad. Yeah. Well, okay. By alien, you mean so.
I mean like green
had
big eyes and doesn't speak English.
Yeah.
No, I hear it. Yeah, human it's all visual approximations to human so far.
Right. So yeah. Okay, cool. Just to make sure we're on the same page. Like I don't want you to think of it. Yeah. All right.
No, I know where you're going.
Cool. Okay. So then, so if this this very human-looking individual turned out to be that would have this Homo erectus ancestry, and then this individual did not have this. So let's
reciprocity.
Right. So reciprocity. Yeah. So for the sake of ease, actually, I'm gonna save number 3 for last, just so I can like clarify up the human is no longer a human thing after. But if this human had the same degree of spreading life, this tendency of spreading life throughout the universe as the cow did, and if this specific human had the same degree of having pain or suffering of the others who care for them, and if this human had the same degree of individual goals, of individual goal disconformity as the cow did, and then we find out that it turns out in this human's anthropologic history, it was not the case that their lineage traced back to Homo erectus.
Mm-hmm.
In that case, would we say that farming this individual human for its flesh would have the moral evaluation of moderately bad to severely bad, but it's not something that would keep you awake at night?
It would.
Yes. It's not it's just the mic. I can't hear if it was a yes or a.
I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay. Cool. And you could, and if that were the case, for this individual, you wouldn't be surprised would you say you wouldn't be surprised if you found yourself like consuming their flesh? Like in like going to the market and purchasing that individual's flesh?
No, I would not be surprised.
Okay. All right. So I think I understand your value. I think I understand your moral system. I think I understand what are the differences that's giving you these different conclusions. I strongly I very, very much have different values. If there was an individual, so if we had this human and we found out, if like we took like a group of, so before I even go there, like let's just say like we had like a whole bunch of these individuals that appeared to be these mentally disabled individuals, and then we found out that all of these things were like as the individual I just described. So it's not just one; it's like many of them. Would you have that same evaluation for just mass producing these humans? Sorry, not humans. These individuals. Okay, so I guess I understand. You have a consistent. So you do have a consistent vehicle. So the issue I would have with it is that if we had a human and it turned out that they could only experience pain and suffering to the degree that a cow did, and if they had, they would not violate our rights in overwhelming majority of cases, but wouldn't look to reciprocate it either. And if this human had the same future life-generating potential to spread life throughout the universe as a human would, and if this human had the same degree of pain and suffering as those who care. No, I'll change it at the end. I skipped. I'm getting there. And if this human had pain and suffering of those who care to the same degree as the cow, and if this human had this same goal disconformity as the cows do, and then we find out about this obviously mentally handicapped human, that it is the case that their ancestry, we trace back their lineage, and it just happens to be that their lineage didn't trace back to Homo erectus. And so, therefore, on this definition of human, they wouldn't be a human anymore. Like, we would not anymore. We would find out that they never were a human. Then I would view it as very important to have that evaluation, and I could see myself buying its flesh. And the reason I do is it's just what I call a shell morality view. And by shell morality, I just mean that the individual, like, whether I could see myself purchasing the flesh of this individual or not, just turns on things like their lineage. Like, if I were to, like, if I found myself, like, I just can't imagine ever finding myself in a situation where my needle of whether I have, like, how close or far away of whether I could be seen reasonably in this system that's mass producing me and slaughtering me, the needle would somehow shift in terms of whether it turned out that I have the lineage of Homo erectus or not. Like, that seems to be very, very, very strange. And because the subjective experience of these individuals, it's not clear that the subjective experience of these individuals would be any different than many mentally handicapped humans that we currently have right now. And so they're...
But I think it's wrong to eat those people.
No, I understand that. No, I got that, because, like, there are certain other symmetry breakers, such as they do have a lineage that traces back to Homo erectus. And so by that definition that you're using, they would be human. So I understand you wouldn't be okay with that. My issue is
as okay,
you wouldn't be as okay, yeah. My issue is just that, but you would be okay with it to the point where you can reasonably see yourself doing it on a fairly regular basis. So the issue I'm going to have is that if we have these individuals that have the minds that are that have the minds that it's not clear that there's any meaningful difference between their minds and the minds of mentally handicapped humans.
You can just say of cows for better clarity.
Well, it's not just...
So, let me just be frank. You're trying to get me to say, you keep repeating human, and you're trying to get me to feel, to emote in my compassion for humans by putting in mentally handicapped individuals. But we've already disambiguated that we're talking about a non-human entity. So you can actually ask me what you're really intending to ask is it okay to eat cows that are in every way basically cows? Then yes.
The reason I'm doing this is not to get you to emote about the shell that is human. All I'm saying is that we can just talk about...
I don't think humans are shells.
It's by shell I just mean some physical characteristic. In this case, it actually is by how I'm using the word shell, because it's just a physical state of affairs in which one traces back on your definition of being a descendant of Homo erectus. So the issue is so the issue here is just I'm saying...
There's no
I'm not trying to make
mentally handicapped. There's not...
The reason
to bring them up is to encourage emotion.
Yep. So I'm absolutely bringing them up, and it's not to I mean, I don't know what you mean by encourage emotion. The reason I'm bringing them up specifically is because if I'm trying to think, nope, I'm trying to think of my values here, and I'm trying to think about why I would care about whether I take a mentally handicapped individual and put them in the system like that, or care about not putting them in a system like that. And it's just not the same things as the things you're mentioning. The reason is just because if
there's no implication of mental handicap in my view.
Wait, by mental handicap, that just means to have a certain subjective. When I say mentally handicapped, I just mean to have there's a certain subjective experience that is identical to what we see as mentally handicapped individuals right now.
Okay.
So yeah. So if we have
that is not the same thing as mentally handicapped individuals.
I understand that. No. I'm not asking you about mentally handicapped individuals right now. I'm just saying that we have this individual, that we have this being that has a subjective experience that is that is the same as disabled people that we currently see right now, mentally disabled people that we currently see right now.
Mm-hmm.
So,
sure.
Yeah. So, I couldn't.
So you're okay? Let me ask you. Are you
sure.
okay eating people that are in a vegetative state because they have the same mental capacity as a plant?
Mm-hmm.
So I will answer that question. But before I do that, I ultimately want to know. So I'm going to flag that question. What I ultimately want to know is, I think Isaac actually asked this the right way. Is it ethical to Holocaust beings who are subjectively identical to currently existing disabled people? Yeah. And by is it ethical? Is it not ethical? Like it is, because you didn't say it was ethical. Would we say that it would be? Yeah. I know you didn't say it was ethical. So I would ask it like this. I would say, would it be moderately bad to severely bad, to the point where we could reasonably see ourselves doing it? Okay. To Holocaust beings who are subjectively identical to currently existing disabled people.
No, I don't, because farming is not Holocausting.
Okay, so by Holocausting, I just mean slaughter on a mass scale.
I mean consume. I don't mean slaughter on a mass scale for no reason.
Okay, slaughter and consume. No. Slaughter
is a
for
very
consuming.
predictable use of term that is trying to again exaggerate emotion.
Yeah. So by Holocaust, just by Holocaust, I just mean a slaughter on a mass scale.
It's not a good faith argument at all.
It's not an argument.
That's not what Holocaust means. It's not. That's not what Holocaust means.
Okay, that's fine. I don't. That's fine. Presumably we're not linguistic prescriptivists. So we're not going to say there's an objective meaning to words. That we give the meaning to them, and
I think there's a consensus meaning, and nobody says Holocaust and everyone's in the same sense.
Well,